All right, welcome to the Krueg Show. Friday night, 5 minutes or about 6 minutes after 5 on the West Coast. That means it's 6 minutes after 8 on the East Coast. Everybody's having a great Friday, getting ready for the weekend. Niners getting ready to take on the Buccaneers Sunday at Levi's. And we got the great Dave Lombardi in the house. You can read him in The Athletic. You watch him on his own YouTube channel, and he's here on the Krueg Show to chop it up and talk a little 49er football. Dave, good to see you, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. Made it through a little bit of a cold last week, so knock on wood. I hope that's the one mid-season little illness that always seems to come around when the weather starts to drop and you're just kind of running ragged, right? These seasons take a lot out of you. So now we're ready for the stretch run coming out of the bye week. I'm feeling great. Tampa Bay coming into town on Sunday, and the 49ers, I have to say, looks like the team that we thought they were going to be after that game in Jacksonville.
Yeah, and we're going to get all up in it right now. Of course, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the title sponsor of the Krueg Show. Also, New York-style Italian sausage, and bottom of the screen, Marin Auto Glass. Check them out at marinautoglass.com, 415-883-3030. Let's hit the bye week for a second, because you saw those numbers, Shanahan's record pre-bye week with the 49ers, Shanahan's record after the bye week. And his record after the bye week is dramatically better than his record going, pre-bye week. I don't have the numbers exactly in front of me, but they're pretty overwhelming. What do you make of that, Dave? Because there's a lot of factors that could be at play here, from the motivation of a team that, goes deep into the playoffs as far, early the next season in the first part of the year. There's also injuries. There could be coaching changes. There could be adjustments. What do you make of they're so much better after the bye than they are before the bye under Kyle?
Well, first, I think that Kyle Shanahan's offense is especially intricate with all the motions and some of the timing. So I don't think that it's a coincidence that they've generally gotten better over the course of seasons, because every year is a different story, different players. Even if you have the same central characters, it takes all 11 to move the football, and you have to get everybody in lockstep. You talk about the 49ers offensive line. These guys will tell you sometimes, especially early in the season, a lot of the talk is we missed this block by 2 inches. If somebody else is positioned in a different way, that goes for an 80-yard touchdown instead of a 5-yard gain. Stuff like that. Or instead of a 5-yard loss, it goes for a 20-yard gain, whatever. However you look at it, I think there's a lot of that in the 49ers offense, that you see more of the negative early in the season before the guys are in full cohesion. And generally, if they stay healthy enough, they have enough practice together, they have enough games together, they hit their stride later on. I would say that this season in particular, the same type of dynamic might apply to the defense as well. If you remember in the offseason, the 49ers were talking about, we don't think our defense is going to be the same defense that it will be in December and January earlier in the year, in September and October. They figured that with the addition of Steve Wilks, the introduction of some new coverage concepts, some new disguises, all that good stuff on the back end, they figured there might be some growing pains. We did indeed see growing pains. They're bigger than I think anybody anticipated, but they did for sure hit the 49ers against Minnesota and Cincinnati, and they've hit them in the run game too. They haven't been nearly as good against the run. I think that the 49ers hope that all of that will turn into some real blossoming down the stretch defensively. So offense, defense, this is just a team that I think on an almost annual basis is built for at least one side of the ball to really blossom over time. And that's probably why you see that difference in record before and after the bye week.
You wrote, I titled this stream, by the way, is Brock Purdy the 49ers best quarterback since Steve Young? And, it's like, it's that seems like the unthinkable, right? They had Colin Kaepernick, and they have Jimmy Garoppolo, and they've been to a couple Super Bowls, one with Jimmy, one with Colin. Then, of course, in between there was Jeff Garcia.
Yeah,
Jeff Garcia was a Pro Bowler, and I love Jeff Garcia. He's a great guy. I scouted him in the Canadian League. But I really believe that Brock has potential to be better than all of them. Garcia, it was unique in that he played with that third down urgency that Young played his entire career with. Garcia played with that as well, which is to me what separates those two guys from a lot of quarterbacks. But I still think when you look at the processing, the accuracy, the timing, the kinds of plays that Brock has made in a short amount of time, I do believe that Brock is the best quarterback the Niners have had since Young. Where do you weigh in on that, Dave? Because there are people that would say, "Hey, look, pump the brakes." We thought Kaepernick was super special, and it didn't work out. We thought, Garoppolo was super special. He regressed. You know, I think there's a lot of Niner fans, Dave, kind of waiting for Brock's regression. I'm not. I'm not in that camp. I feel like we've seen the good and the bad from Brock in the first 17 games of his pro career. But where do you sit with Brock?
All you can do is judge based on the body of work so far. And he has a full season of work now, 17 games. If you count the Miami game where he came in the first quarter as a start and you toss out the Philadelphia game, he went 4 for 4 there. So it hurts his numbers to toss them out. But I don't think it's good for analysis because he tore his UCL just a few throws in. So anyway, if you look at that sample, 17 games, full season, it's indisputable. It's been the best full season sample from a 49ers quarterback since Steve Young in the 1990s. Brock Purdy has a 110 rating over that time. That's also tops in the NFL for both 2022 and 2023. He's got the highest QBR, which is more sophisticated than quarterback rating. He leads in adjusted net yards per attempt, yards per attempt. I mean, whichever way you want to slice it up, he's at the top of all the league charts right now. And he's also doing it behind an offensive line that's ranked number 22. We know that this offensive line is not flawless. He played well even when Trent Williams was out, too. Williams was hurt against Cleveland, and Brock Purdy still led the 49ers into scoring range when Jake Moody missed a field goal against the league's best defense. That was, on the aggregate, though, Purdy's only bad game this year, the game against the Browns. That was a negative efficiency game. But he was still good against Minnesota, and he was still good against Cincinnati. In fact, you can argue that he was the one player that was most responsible for keeping the 49ers in those games, despite the fact that their defense was playing so poorly. He just hasn't been explosively good without Trent Williams, Deebo Samuel, or Christian McCaffrey. And you could say that about any quarterback in NFL history, right? If any quarterback in NFL history is playing on a team with Trent, Deebo, and Christian, and all of a sudden Trent, Deebo, and Christian were compromised by injury, that quarterback's numbers would regress, not just Brock Purdy's. So the fact that Purdy's been good in all the games except for the game against the defense that some people are saying is historically good. Some of the numbers indicate that Cleveland's defense might be historically good. The fact that that's happened, you have to give him his flowers at this point. Now, whether or not he regresses moving forward, I don't know. I think that's why we watch the NFL on a week in, week out basis to see who's going to continue performing, to see who can counter adjust to the league's adjustments. I think that the main thing to realize right now is that Brock Purdy has an excellent physical skill set. People were extremely wrong about his physical skill set. He is not limited physically. His burst is faster than almost any other quarterback in the league. We've already talked about his 10-yard split. So he can get out of the pocket. He can evade short area pressure very effectively. And time again, we've seen him make the NFL throws that need to be made. And I'll just leave it with the one against Jacksonville to George Kittle. The pocket is collapsing on him. And Purdy somehow, without a platform, chucks it downfield and hits George Kittle in stride for the 66-yard touchdown. Kyle Shanahan was on the sideline, and he said it looked like Purdy was throwing a grenade out of a bunker. And, to be able to hit the grenade throw, a deep pass, you've got to have a significant amount of arm talent. So I just think that the entire league, the 49ers included, underscouted this guy. The 49ers got lucky because they were able to pick him up at 262. But from what we've seen out of Purdy, I think it is sustainable based on the skill set that he has and the mental makeup that he has. And the mental makeup is a lot of what I wrote about in that article.
Yeah, I want to get to that article because it was a really good piece in The Athletic. I'd encourage people to go check it out in The Athletic. But I was amazed by that throw just from the standpoint of I believe Brock can make all the throws, even the downfield throws that, the whole is he dink and dunk. I think more than anything, we're finding out that his personality is to attack down the field.
Larry, it's so funny how wrong that narrative was. Can I just jump in?
Really it's funny.
It's like you couldn't be more wrong about something than to have called Brock Purdy a dink and dunk quarterback. That's the thing. It's not just like they were slightly off with that narrative. It's like literally the polar opposite of the truth. Yes.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's amazing that became the narrative. It's like we truly are in a mode where people are casual fans and casual observers, and they're literally judging the book by the cover. And I get it. He's kind of a narrowed-shouldered guy. He's only about 6 feet and change. He doesn't look like a big, broad-shouldered powerhouse, Justin Herbert, Josh Allen. He doesn't have that stature. I get it. We all get it. But watching that throw, and in fact, I asked Kittle about it this week. You were standing right next to me. And I said, George, were you surprised that Brock made that throw? Because he didn't step into it, didn't follow through, kind of threw it flat-footed. I think it's great that Kyle called it kind of a grenade, because it really was like there was no room there for him to step into it. And I was a believer that maybe Brock didn't have the greatest arm strength, but that if he had the ability to step into his throws, he could make any throw downfield. This, though, almost makes his arm look stronger than average, because he didn't step into that at all. He threw that thing at least 35 yards down the field, and he led George Kittle away from a defender into an open space by 5-6 feet, where Kittle had to literally kind of go put his arms out and go for it.
Yeah.
It just, to me, it's like, if you're in that camp that's questioning the arm strength of Brock Purdy, how can you watch that play and continue that bogus narrative? And it just, I don't know if it's laziness or just we love to judge a book by the cover, but I get it. I understand why people think he's kind of diminutive, but there's nothing really diminutive about his mindset or his skill set.
It started with laziness, then it turned into obstinance, stubbornness, because people just don't like being wrong. And
right
now it's just like, not everybody who has a show should have a show, kind of thing. Just because you can go and start spouting something and people will watch doesn't necessarily mean that you should. And because there's so much just self-preservation. You have to preserve your personal brand. I have to preserve my personal brand. Well, if I said this about Brock Purdy 4 months ago, my personal brand doesn't look very good if I go out and I, completely backtrack on it. But to be honest, I think your personal brand would look a whole lot better if you just say, okay, sorry, I was wrong about this. Every single bit of data is opposite of what I said. Got that one wrong. You can move along. I think it'd be totally fine. But there's a lot of ego nowadays, right? And there's just like digging in, and I'm going to be right no matter what. And it's like, okay, at what cost do you want to be right? Right? Because right now you're literally looking at Brock Purdy, number one quarterback in the NFL by every efficiency metric, making all the throws he needs to. You have it on tape. You have Hall of Famers like Kurt Warner, saying that what I'm saying is true. Guys that obviously know a lot more than somebody just sitting down on a couch with a camera, and then you're still arguing that. Like, what are we doing here? At this point, and it's 1 + 1 = 3 kind of stuff, Larry. So I think it's a weird phenomenon, but I really wish it would stop, because it's stopping us from appreciating the true essence of the game and the story that Brock Purdy's delivering right now. Trent Williams said it best. 49ers hit the Powerball at $2 billion in the lottery with Brock Purdy.
Right.
Trent Williams, I think, knows a whole lot more than the casual observer. He's a 35-year-old future first ballot Hall of Famer.
It always amazes me, the audacity that people have, just because you've got your hands on the all-22 copy of the film, that you're now going to question like Richard Sherman about the film. You know what I mean? Yeah, a guy who played a decade in the NFL and was incredibly cerebral, and you're going to actually try to go toe-to-toe and debate, guys who roll that film back and forth for a living, like the Baldingers and the Cossells, or guys who just have watched tons of film, like any player who played for any amount of time in the league. And yet there are people that, hey, man, I saw it. I've got a big ego. I've got 5 people in my chat who are telling me I'm the man. And so I don't care if Richard Sherman disagrees with me. I'm just going to double down and fight him publicly. I mean, we're now at an embarrassing moment, I kind of think, where it's like, really? I mean, you're going to battle a guy that watched film for 15 years at Stanford and then in the pros. And, it's like telling him he needs to watch it more. I mean, really?
It's what social media has done, right? It's just completely opened up the floodgates of information. Everybody could be their own broadcaster, and we're not used to it. And I think that I think it will naturally kind of correct itself, because I think, I believe in the free marketplace of ideas. So I think at a certain point, people will call out the people that, you would think that are spouting some of the nonsense, and those viewerships will go down. But, there is a period of correction, and we're probably in the midst of it right now. And during that period of correction, the more outrageous the comment, the more traction it probably gets, right? And unfortunately, that leads to a lot of these narratives just going wild.
Oh, just absolutely run amok. All right, let's talk about your article, because it's really well written. It's in The Athletic. You came out with it yesterday. It centers on Brock Purdy and Christian McCaffrey. Tell people the premise and why they should go check it out, and what you discovered.
Well, I mean, the overarching context to me is just something that people need to zoom out and appreciate, because I feel that, again, there isn't enough appreciation of this in some corners. But 49ers literally have the top-rated quarterback in the game, and they have the most productive skill position player in the game. They're both on the same team. It's Brock Purdy and it's Christian McCaffrey. Then they're loaded with way more talent beyond that. But just in a vacuum, the fact that they have those two things, and they're paying what, $800,000, $900,000 for the QB portion of it, crazy, right? It turns out that you could trace this back to when Christian was traded. The 49ers traded for him on a Thursday night. He had to play, or he wanted to play, on Sunday against the Chiefs. Kyle Shanahan thought that doing so would be impossible because of how intricate the offense is. I was just talking about that a few minutes ago. But Christian was adamant that he wanted to play, and the 49ers gave him a playbook as soon as he landed, and they said, okay, we'll try to get you ready. We don't know if this is going to be possible, but we'll try to get you ready. On the day in between the Friday practice and the Sunday games, Saturday, Brock Purdy, who was the backup quarterback at the time because Jimmy Garoppolo was busy with starting QB prep, Brock Purdy walked Christian McCaffrey through the entire 49ers playbook. It took a couple hours out on the practice field. Brock Purdy was still an anonymous backup quarterback at the time. He was wide-eyed looking at Christian McCaffrey, obviously was already an NFL superstar. Brock says that teaching the playbook helped him, especially once he started a few weeks after that, after Garoppolo went down, because sometimes teaching is the best way to truly absorb something. And obviously Christian can't be more thankful for what happened. So even though Christian McCaffrey joined the 49ers midseason last year, he, out of all their star players, actually had the earliest true exposure to Brock Purdy, because Garoppolo was still the quarterback for those first few weeks. And I think there's something to be said about the bond between these two guys, because it goes back to that very first day that Christian McCaffrey was in the 49ers facility. So anyway, that's
and
what
he credits Brock with helping him help teaching him the offense and the intricacies, and they as they learned from each other. I mean, because there were things about NFL football that I'm sure CMC knew that Purdy was not as privy to, so they probably helped each other out.
They learned from each other in extra time, basically. They're working overtime. And a lot of people who have commented on the story have said this reminds me of, the great 1990s 49ers. Jerry Rice would be in the building. There was the famous story about Steve Young coming in after they lost to the Cowboys in 93, the day after the season was over, and the facility was empty, except you looked out on the field and there was Jerry Rice running routes on the very next day. So, in so many ways, I think this 49ers team under Lynch and Shanahan has tried to bring in the right guys. And sometimes that just means bringing in great players, because I think there's a correlation between good attitude and great play, right? If you have a bad attitude, then you probably won't be a great player. I think there is a correlation there. But they've made sure that they brought in all pro players, but also players who fit well into the locker room. McCaffrey's a great example. Trent Williams is a great example. Nick Bosa is the great example. And obviously Brock Purdy is turning into a really good example in his own right. And then you see this dynamic really flourish. When you walk through the locker room, it feels like the Pro Bowl, right? That's what Christian McCaffrey told me last year. He's like, I'm walking around here, feels like the Pro Bowl. After a game, Trent Williams is at his locker and Nick Bosa pulls up a chair and they break it down. And I wrote a big piece about that last year toward the end of the season. And this is stuff like, people will be like, oh, this is just raw stuff that you're bringing up. It's like, no, I'm in that locker room. And I asked Trent Bosa. I asked Trent Williams about it. I asked Nick Bosa about it. I asked Christian McCaffrey about it. I asked Richard Sherman about it, even though he's no longer there. All of these guys will say, no, this is special. We've seen the NFL. We've been in different locker rooms. What's happening right here is different. And it's the same stuff that people said about the 49ers of the 80s and the 90s. So the goal has been to foster that kind of dynamic in the locker room. And the 49ers hope that that's what eventually helps take them the distance to the Super Bowl this year.
Well, it's a well-written piece, and I would encourage people to go check it out in The Athletic. Now, as we look ahead to this particular game, I guess the question I would have is, Trent Williams has got the ankle, and it sounds like he's still not 100%. Colton McKivitz has got a knee and an ankle injury, but he's practiced all week. I asked Chris Forster yesterday who would be first up, and he said it would be Pryor at right tackle, but that Jalen Moore could be in the mix if Pryor in any way disappoints. But Dave, based on what you're hearing today, because you were there today, I wasn't down there today, it sounds like McKivitz and Trent Williams are both going to go, in this game against Tampa Bay?
Yeah, I mean, Colton McKivitz didn't have a brace or anything on either the knee or the ankle all week. He practiced all 3 days. I would think that he's going to be the starting right tackle in this game. Trent Williams, he's fine. I mean, he's been off I don't even know if he's still listed on the injury report, but he's feeling even better than last week. So I would expect the same offensive line as Jacksonville. Feliciano taking over for Banks. Maybe Banks back on Thursday, maybe not though. Might be tough on a short week. So Feliciano played well against Jacksonville. In fact, I would say that was the best performance of the interior line the 49ers have had all year with Feliciano, Brendel, and Burford. Now, that being said, I don't think that was their biggest test. I don't think that Jacksonville had a true kind of fire hydrant type run stuffer, disruptor, and Tampa Bay definitely does in Vita Vea. So this is going to be a big test for the interior line. Remember, Vita Vea, Bay Area native, by the way, started the game last year but got hurt really early on. I think that was part of the reason why the 49ers were able to blow Tampa Bay out so easily.
Yeah, and no Antoine Winfield. So, I mean, you could make an argument that they didn't have their best guy up front or on the back end last year in that game. I mean, it was 35-7 49ers, but just it's worth noting. I thought it was interesting, so back to Feliciano for a second. Do you think Feliciano will slate in full-time instead of Burford at right guard? Do you think they'll wind up sharing right guard like Brunskill and Burford did a year ago? Do you think there's any chance that Burford stays in there and that Brendel, who seemingly got overpowered by the power of DJ Reader, could give his job away to Feliciano? Because I think it's pretty clear at this point that Feliciano, who started and has started much of his NFL career, is more than just an insurance policy. I think he's significantly better than Daniel Brunskill. No offense to Brunskill, but I think Feliciano is probably going to wind up starting the rest of the way. Is it going to be at guard or at center, do you think?
Well, Kyle Shanahan has said that the plan is to platoon, or at least they're thinking about inserting Feliciano as a platoon with Spencer Burford at right guard, kind of like they did with Daniel Brunskill last year. That was what they were planning to do before Aaron Banks got hurt. So now that Banks is unavailable at left guard, Feliciano has to be at left guard. Whether or not they pick up where they left off with that other plan once Banks returns, I don't know yet, but it seems to me that right guard is the spot that they're targeting for John Feliciano. Then, you do have to wonder, because Jalen Moore played really well, I thought, especially in pass protection when he filled in for Trent Williams. You have to wonder if he ultimately gets a look at right tackle instead of just left tackle. And the appropriate background there is that in 2021, Jalen Moore was actually ahead of Colton McKivitz on the pecking order. Jalen Moore filled in for McGlinchey at right tackle after Mike McGlinchey got hurt around midseason. The 49ers went to Jacksonville And Jalen Moore, on a touchdown pass from Jimmy Garoppolo to Brandon Ayuk, gave up a quarterback hit. He gave up a pressure. Edge rusher ran right around him, and Garoppolo got hit, but he still threw the touchdown. But remember, we didn't see Jalen Moore again. Colton McKivitz came in and replaced him, or maybe it was Tom Compton. I think no, it was Tom Compton who came in, replaced him at right tackle. Yeah. So anyway, McKivitz essentially leapfrogged Moore on the pecking order back in 2021. So you can't rule out the possibility of Jalen Moore leapfrogging McKivitz because it's already happened within this 49ers structure. So I would just keep an eye out for that. But as of right now, the 49ers are looking at Moore as a left tackle and Matt Pryor as the backup at right tackle. But I don't think that's firmly set in stone. Because, for example, Kyle Shanahan said that this week that they would get Moore ready for right tackle in case McKivitz couldn't go. And they're also obviously getting Matt Pryor ready at right tackle in case McKivitz can't go. So that was an interesting little nugget to me.
Yeah, I agree. What's the bigger concern from your vantage point about Tampa Bay? Is it the D line that has Vita Vea and Shaq Barrett, Logan Wilson, who's a pretty good player? I really love Kalijah Cansey, the rookie out of Pittsburgh. Or do you think the bigger concern is on the other side of the ball with Evans and Godwin and two receivers that just have outstanding hands and ball skills?
I think that the defense is a much bigger concern. I think that Evans and Godwin are both dangerous players, but Tampa Bay hasn't really scared anybody offensively this year with its explosiveness. They're ranked number 19 in explosive play rate. Most importantly, they can't run the ball. They might be the worst running offense in the league. Rashad White's only averaging 3.3 yards per carry. Their run block win rate, if you look at all the metrics, the offensive line aren't good. But they're decent in pass protection. The thing that Tampa's offense has done well this year is hold on to the football. They have the second lowest turnover rate in football, and they have the fifth fewest sacks given up in football. So I think Baker Mayfield has delivered some heady play this year. I think they've avoided disaster for the most part, but they've also avoided the explosiveness that will scare you. So just in summary, their offense is decent enough at keeping you close if their defense plays well. But I think that they do need their defense to play extremely well, and it has the capability of doing that, which is why I would worry a little bit more about that side of the ball. Tampa's been a good run defense for years under Todd Bowles. They blitz a ton under Todd Bowles. In fact, they blitz the second highest rate in the league, behind only Minnesota. The 49ers, after this Sunday is done, will have faced the 5 most blitz-happy teams in the league, and Brock Purdy has lit up all of them. Even Minnesota. Wow. He was fine against the blitz against Minnesota. The interceptions happened after when the concussion probably happened. They came against drops in coverage. They didn't come against the blitz. Brock Purdy lit up Tampa Bay last year, especially after the first play mess up where the nickelback drilled him in the backfield, but he lit up the blitz. So I think that it's a good matchup for the 49ers against the Tampa Bay defense because they have beaten these blitzes and they can run against teams when Trent Williams is in there. And that's the main issue against this Tampa Bay defense. But you've got to be on your P's and your Q's in the red zone because this is the best red zone defense in the league. The Buccaneers, they can stop the run, so they're good in the red zone. The 49ers need to make sure that they reverse those two trends in this game. I think they're fully equipped to do it, but that is where Tampa Bay is the most dangerous.
Yeah, they definitely stand up in the red zone, and that's why they're better against points than they are in the yards. Batman 29 says, Larry, is this your third stream of the day? You're a beast. Yes, I am. Al Sacco earlier today checked in with Al. And went again this morning with Chase Sr. on 10:45. Hakeem the Dream says Alex Smith is the best quarterback since Steve Young. It's not even close. If Smith was drafted by Harbaugh, he would have been a Hall of Famer, accurate, leader, tough. I disagree with that.
Garoppolo was much more efficient than Smith.
Yeah, Smith took care of the ball and wouldn't turn it over. But anybody who watched Smith go 1 for 14 on third down conversions at home in the NFC Championship game against the New York Giants. You know, come on. I mean,
that was the moment when they decided, okay, we want to replace him with Colin Kaepernick, and Kaepernick was still raw. But by the next season, it didn't matter what Smith did, right? He had that great game against the Cardinals, but he was benched right after that with the concussion. And yeah, you're right. I mean, when the lights came on in that NFC Championship game and they went 1 of 13 on third down, it was
Yeah.
tough.
I mean, everybody remembers the turnovers, Kyle Williams or whatever, but come on. It was Smith also not converting on any third downs that night against that Giant defense. As Surratt says, Purdy equals Josh Dobbs, not even Steve, not Steve Young, for God's sake. I totally disagree with that.
Again, Purdy's at the top of every single statistic right now. Like the relevant,
Right.
I'm not going to go into raw yardage. It doesn't matter. But if you look at rating, if you look at anything that takes into account the per throw efficiency, he's number one. What else is he supposed to do? What can he do to impress you more? He's won with his legs. He's won with his arm. He's won with his accuracy. He's won with his pre-snap adjustments. Listen to Trent Williams. Like if you think you know better than Trent Williams, Richard Sherman, George Kittle, Bosa, all these guys are saying the same thing about
Kurt
Purdy.
Warner,
So,
Mike Martz.
So it's to me. Oh, Kurt Warner. I thought you said Fred Warner. Kurt Warner. So if you want to say, oh, his teammates are just talking him up, Kurt Warner's not his teammate. You know, and Kurt Warner, he has some skin to lose in this game because he, had the best start in NFL history for a quarterback. Purdy now has better numbers than Warner. So Warner doesn't have those bragging rights anymore. But Warner acknowledges it. So I don't understand why, random people on Twitter and YouTube can't.
They're dug in and they just don't want to admit they're wrong. Eric Nelson says, did Jalen Moore practice at right tackle at all? Did he get any reps? I mean, we're not out there for practice.
Kyle said yes. Shanahan said that they would get him ready for it. So whether that means probably means second team reps, but that's the most I know. So
yeah. Surratt says Larry cries on defense when Purdy shows who he is.
I don't understand the comment.
I'm not sure. And cries would be an IES. I'm not sure. I'm not getting that one, but thanks for the $2. Edward Willis says, you guys are the best. And my boy, Chase. Oh, thank you. And we got this one here from Daza, who says, wouldn't Jeff Garcia be the best quarterback since Steve Young? He's a 4-time Pro Bowler. Purdy hasn't even started a full season yet.
He has. Purdy has 17 games now under his belt. That's why we're talking about it now, is that we got that full sample now. So yeah, I get it. Yeah, I guess he wants him to finish this year, but
how many playoff games did Jeff Garcia win? One?
He beat just one. They beat the New York Giants when they were down 24. That was
Purdy's already got 2.
Yeah.
In that area, he's beating them.
And you know what? Let's put it out here. He started 4 for 4 against the Eagles before the injury. So it wasn't like they were shutting him down. They were moving down the field. We'll get to see how that might have gone later this year. But it didn't seem to me that a defense really stopped Brock Purdy's efficiency. I think the injury did.
That's a great point. And also, there are a lot of Philadelphia media people and a lot of Philadelphia Eagles that believe that the 49ers were disrespecting them by saying that they would have beaten the Eagles if Brock hadn't gone down. And I think that people read that as disrespect to the Eagles and somehow some kind of insult directed at the Eagles. I read that as just a total unwavering belief in Brock Purdy. Yeah. And I think everybody read that as kind of like, oh, they're dissing the Eagles. They're not dissing the Eagles. They're just saying, hey, we really believe in our guy. And we believe that we were going to go there and beat your team with our guy, and our guy wasn't there. And so that's what I think that is what made Kittle and Debo and these other guys come out and basically said, hey, man, we would have won that game, because deep down, they really believed it. And if they believe it, they're going to say it. I think I don't think it was any kind of, hey, we couldn't come to grips with the fact that we lost or we can't come to the grips with the fact that we were so close and missed out. I think it was clearly their statement nationally to whoever was asking that they had that level of belief in Brock Purdy. And once Purdy went out, they looked at that game in a totally different fashion.
Well, just reverse the roles, right? What if in that game, Jalen Hurts got hurt on the first possession, Brock Purdy stayed healthy, and the 49ers blew the Eagles out? Eagles would be saying the same thing. They'd be like, oh, the only reason this happened is because Jalen Hurts got hurt. They'd have every right to say it. I don't think they'd be correct, but I do think that if you looked at the performance over a longer stretch last year, from the moment that Purdy took over to obviously, the moment that he got hurt, the 49ers were head and shoulders the most efficient team in football. Offense, defense, and special teams. They had a special formula working. So it's not like their confidence is coming out of nowhere. They should have been confident they were going to win that game. And then he got hurt. And that directly ties into a lot of what we're seeing this year, the starting QB injury across the league, right? Every single team that the 49ers have lost to, their starter's done for the year. Deshaun Watson and the Browns, even though he didn't play against them. Kirk Cousins, done with the Achilles. Vikings. Burrow, out, torn ligament in his wrist. The reason I bring that up is, I guess in the case of Josh Dobbs, maybe Minnesota can resurrect its season, but so much of this is reliant on your quarterback staying healthy, and sometimes he doesn't. And this year especially, these starting quarterbacks aren't healthy. And sometimes it's just a freak occurrence. He gets hit the wrong way and his UCL snaps. And in most 99 times out of 100, I think, in the Purdy situation against Philadelphia, he gets sacked. Maybe it's a fumble. Philadelphia gets the ball, but the 49ers still have their quarterback able to throw, and unfortunately for them, they didn't have that luxury against the Eagles. So a lot of winning a championship is obviously skill, it's talent, it's how good your team is, but there's a fairly big portion of it that is luck, and it's injury luck. And some of these teams that have seen their quarterbacks go down, like the Bengals, giving me really 2020 49ers vibes, they haven't had that fortune. And the 49ers, they're knocking on wood. They want to make sure they have that fortune moving forward here in 2023.
Hey, Shanahan was asked a question today. I'm going to play this one. This is from today's presser, and then give me your thoughts on this little exchange. And I wish I was there for this today, but I wasn't. But here we go. Here's Shanahan earlier.
Jordan Mason hasn't had to carry in 3 weeks. He's averaging 5.6 yards per carry. What does he need to do to get back in the mix and earn your trust?
Why would that be the issue?
I don't know. I guess it's confusing for a running back who's so efficient to fall out of the mix. I was wondering what he would need to do to get back in it.
2 guys in front of him would have to get hurt to get more. There's 3 of them. When you're playing, I don't trust him or something. That's what I heard in the question. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what your question is.
Okay, let me try again.
Why is he the third running back?
Yeah, why would you give Mitchell the carries over him when Mitchell's averaging 2-something yards a carry?
And we look at more than stats. Mitchell's our number 2 back. He's done some pretty good things here.
Sure.
And JP's our 3. He's been our 2 at times. But it's how most cases are in the NFL.
All right, there you go. That was a little back and forth from earlier today. I wasn't down there and I missed that one. And, this is a question I was going to ask Shanahan myself. It seemed that Shanahan didn't like the idea of the way Grant phrased that as, hey, what does he have to do to kind of regain your trust? And Shanahan kind of pushed back on that and was like, hey, why is that? Why do you think that's the issue? I've wanted to ask this question for about 3 weeks, but every single time I go to formulate the question, the answer is right there, right? It's like they evaluate these backs, and they've evaluated that CMC's their 1, that Mitchell is their 2, and that JP Mason is their 3. So as many times as I wanted to ask that question, I always halt myself because I kind of feel like I know what he's going to say. He's going to say that the other 2 guys, in his estimation, are higher rated. And so then he kind of bristled at the idea that it was a trust issue. What do you think as far as Shanahan and these backs? I mean, JP Mason has looked good in camp, but is it because he fumbled in camp, you think, Dave, that he doesn't advance past Mitchell at any point? The stats, I think you can throw out. Just Mitchell only plays a little bit here and there. He hasn't had a good enough sample size to really throw out any stat line and attribute it to him, really. It's just more about, obviously, you prefer Mitchell to Mason. I think the question that might be the better question is why? Why do you prefer Mitchell to Mason? And I'd love to hear what he has to say. What do you think he would say if he was asked that question?
I think that Mitchell has a very proven track record of running the outside zone well for the 49ers. I think dependability is a big, big part of it as far as ball security. I think that Jordan Mason did fumble a couple times early in training camp, and that might have been what pushed the 49ers to just value that reliability over what Jordan Mason, or they thought Jordan Mason might bring to the table this year. Obviously, Mason last year was the number 2 and played. That was, I think, when Mitchell was hurt, played as the closer for the 49ers down the stretch of games. He might still have an opportunity this year. These seasons are long. Injuries happen. Obviously, Elijah Mitchell has suffered a ton of them. But yeah, you can't just look at yards per carry over a tiny sample size and be like, oh, this guy is the better running back. Kyle Shanahan and the coaching staff, they're watching hours and hours of film. They're looking at this much more intricately than any of us are. So that's the pecking order that they like right now. Obviously, Elijah Mitchell, I think, has accomplished more in a 49ers uniform than Jordan Mason. It seemed like Kyle Shanahan was implying that that might have something to do with it. I'm of the opinion that you just need to have as many capable bodies back there as possible, because we've seen the 49ers run through running backs in the past. And when there have been a ton of injuries there, it's been a big problem for this football team. So they want to have as many capable guys as possible. Christian McCaffrey adds another dynamic that is hard to replace because he's such a good receiver. And Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason are nowhere near his ability level as a receiver. There's a significant drop-off in your passing threat from the running back position whenever you take Christian off of the field. And I think this is my one concern. Whenever the 49ers do bring Mitchell in, they're almost telegraphing run at this point. And I don't think that Shanahan thinks it'd be much better with Jordan Mason. It's just that McCaffrey is such a sensational talent that the reluctance to take him off the field happens because you're like, oh no, who's going to replace my receiving threat? Because Christian McCaffrey is also an all-pro receiver on top of being an all-pro running back. But anyway, I really, really do think that we're splitting hairs here, arguing over Elijah Mitchell or Jordan Mason to get the few reps that Christian McCaffrey can't take. Really, it's one of those things where the coaching staff, for that fine-tuned of a decision, has way more data and has been looking at this way more closely than anybody on the outside even has the possibility of looking at, because they don't have the look at a lot of the practice film.
Do you think that Kyle is making this call, or do you think he's deferring to Bobby T, who's making this call?
I think that Bobby Turner has significant influence. Kyle Shanahan trusts him with his life, right? He's been the running backs coach for this system going back to 1996 in Denver when Mike Shanahan was the head coach. So I think the 49ers take Bobby Turner's recommendation. I think obviously Kyle Shanahan is in on offensive meetings, so he has his input too, but it is a collaborative process. And I know that Bobby Turner's voice carries a lot of weight in that room.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any doubt about that. I only asked that question. I mean, I know Kyle's the head coach. The head coach always has the final say, but you do get the sense that Bobby T is your ticket to the field at running back. And if you don't satisfy Bobby T for whatever reason, that you're not getting on the field, regardless how Kyle feels sometimes.
This next question up here, this is easy.
Dazza says, even if Mason is bad in protection or route running, why can't he be used?
Because Christian McCaffrey's your best short yardage back. I mean, people overthink this so much, right? I mean, you saw it the other game. One of the biggest plays was a 3rd and 2 that Christian McCaffrey miraculously kind of squeezed through, powered through, picked up the first down. You know what I'm talking about? That 3rd and 2? Yeah. Mason's not picking up that first down in that traffic. Elijah Mitchell's not picking it up. Ty Davis Price isn't picking it up. Christian McCaffrey is. And generally, short yardage situations are major leverage points in a football game. So if Christian McCaffrey is your best short yardage back, you give it to Christian McCaffrey because you need to pick up that first down. You're not just giving people carries for fun. Yeah, Jordan Mason's a big body. I think he's a good short yardage back. But Christian McCaffrey is a future Hall of Fame player who's good at everything. So that's why they struggle to take him off the field, because he's the best. He's literally the best.
I wouldn't take him off the field. My point of contention as far as Mason's run would be, why don't they at times take Juwan Jennings, who runs 4.7 something, off the field, flex out Christian, and put Mason in there 4 or 5 runs a game? Then you're debating who's more dynamic between JP Mason and and Jawan Jennings, and also mix in Christian flexed out. I would do that just to try to save some hits on Christian and maybe try to get a couple of looks for Mason, who does show some explosive traits. I mean, there's no question he shows explosive traits, but it's also a trust game. And, the one thing that we saw, I don't know exactly how many times, but I would say it was between 3 to 5 times we saw Mason fumble this summer in training camp. And training camp only lasts for about three weeks or whatever. So, we probably saw him put the ball on the carpet 4 to 5 times in 3 weeks. So, if you're Kyle Shanahan, how often are you thinking about those fumbles? And, fumbling is the number one way to get yourself in the doghouse in the NFL. The one thing about Elijah Mitchell is he's got a history of never fumbling, going back to Louisiana. So, I think there's a trust that's built up there with, on the fumbling front that Christian has and that Mitchell has over Mason. But if I wouldn't mind seeing Mason a half dozen carries, believe it or not, but I would like to see Christian flexed out and, maybe put a little bit more dynamic speed on the field in all three, of your wide receivers, if you're going with a one back, wide look.
Just remember, when this offense has been healthy, it's been head and shoulders the most efficient offense in football, the way that they've been doing things.
No.
I just think that they're built, and they've tried to build themselves to be resistant to the attrition of a season. And it's not Jordan Mason's time right now, but it might be his time in week 12, week 13, week 14, week 15. I mean, there's so many weeks. It's a marathon, right? And there's just so much impatience to get everybody involved right now. It's like, guys, this is the top offense in football. They're outpacing Miami's offense. They're outpacing Buffalo. Just fired their offensive coordinator, even though they had some pretty good stats. But the 49ers you can't argue with the production, right? The production has been amazing from this team when they've had their pieces in there. So it's hard for me to criticize how they're using individual pieces when the results are what they've been, which is really, really good. And I would urge people to just realize that this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. And history tells us they're probably going to need Jordan Mason at some point. They don't need to force feed him the ball right now.
Yeah. We also have this one from Daza, who says, look how banged up CMC was in the three game losing streak. Don't we want him healthy in the playoffs? Also, CMC has fumbled this season once in the red zone. Yeah, I mean, there's that too. It's like, he's on CMC's having an epic year, but he's on pace for 400 touches. And maybe the thinking is ease up on his touches so that he's good to go in January. But you're gonna worry about tomorrow, so to speak. And that's kind of their mindset.
Can happen on any snap too. It's not like, oh, we eased off 4 snaps in this game. He has a much higher chance of being healthy in December and January. I don't think it quite works like that. It's not like you're playing Madden and the guy has like an exhaustion meter and you have to replenish it. This is real life. It's a lot different. And you have to realize the NFL and the 49ers already took their humble pie over the 3-game losing streak. It's a week-to-week league. You can't just go in and assume you're going to beat Tampa Bay handily. Right. You can't just go in and assume anybody. You have to game plan each week like it's your Super Bowl. Otherwise, you're going to be left in the dust. You cannot be looking ahead. You can't be saying, okay, we're going to chart this out for January. This league is too good for that. I'm sorry. It just is. It just doesn't work in the way that I think people think that it works. It's one of those situations where every single player, even on the worst team of the league, was one of the top players on their college team. So the talent margins between teams are not big at all. Now, the 49ers have built themselves a little bit of insulation because they got a bunch of all pros in there. But as you've seen, one piece isn't ready. One piece is hurt at the wrong spot. And then something goes against you early in the game. Boom, all of a sudden you're in a dogfight.
And there's no room for pace in the NFL. You can't pace yourself. You got to sprint. Everybody collectively has to sprint. You have to put your best foot forward at all times. And you worry about tomorrow. I mean, it literally is that.
It's a sprint that it's like a marathon that you have to run at the pace of a sprint. right?
Right.
That's what makes the NFL so exhilarating. It's not like the NBA where you're sitting there with load management days and days off in baseball. It's like it's not that. This is a sprint.
If you're
But
healthy, you go.
yeah, you're healthy, you go, but you've got to find a way to make it across the marathon finish line at that sprinting effort. That's why you see so many teams fall off, seeing all these injuries. 49ers are just hoping that they've built themselves and they get the appropriate luck to be the team that doesn't fall off, that's standing at the end. It's intense.
Did the 49ers, do we know if the 49ers even attempted to put in a claim on Jack Jones? He went to the Raiders. The Patriots released him or put him through waivers. But does every team have to make their decision before it's announced, or do they go team by team? So
no,
like
every team puts in a claim.
So do we? So we don't know.
And then they see which. So yeah. So we don't know. Like,
what do you think? If you were guessing, would you say they did? Because I mean, now they're after. We'll talk about Jason Verrett next, but clearly the 49ers are looking for help on the corner, and Jack Jones is clearly good enough as a player for them to have interest, regardless of what happened, how it ended in New England.
Yeah, well, I don't know what's going on. It didn't seem to me that New England was in position to be letting go of talented players.
No.
But yeah, it seems to be a train wreck over there. I know he was a lot better last year, Jack Jones, than he has been this year. And obviously there were those issues. The only time I've ever heard of a waiver claim or not announcement being made after the fact was with Baker Mayfield last year. The Rams claimed him, and it turned out that the 49ers didn't. People were really, really interested in if the 49ers would claim him. But I think we talk about votes of confidence in Brock Purdy. That was a big vote of confidence in Brock Purdy last year. They were rolling with him, not Baker Mayfield, when he became available. So I don't know the answer to your question. I'm obviously more intrigued by Jason Verrett because I know we say this all the time with Jason Verrett. If he's healthy, you always put that qualifier there, but it's true. If Jason Verrett is healthy, top shelf corner. I mean, this is one of the most talented corners to ever play the game. And the reason I say that is because he's had 2 Achilles tears and 2 ACL tears, and yet he still is getting chances to play in the league. That shows you how talented Jason Verrett is to be able to overcome 4 season-ending injuries, and he might have even had more season-ending injuries than that, but 2 Achilles, 2 ACLs, and still be a viable, candidate for an NFL roster on the wrong side of 30. You got to be built different to
it just shows what he is.
Yeah,
he is got maybe like the elite footwork of all time. This guy, I mean, moving your feet and how well you move your feet really defines how well you can mirror receivers up and down the field. This guy is like this guy's like the standard of how to move your feet. So I think that's a big part of it right there, Dave. And also he's a local guy, which I think, makes the 49ers always that much more intrigued. But I think it really has to do with just his footwork and his ability to mirror. So what did you get today out of the Shanahan presser? Because it said that they worked him out, and that they don't have anything to announce yet. And then I think either you or somebody kind of pressed forward with, hey, would you like to sign him? And Shanahan said, yeah, we would like to sign him.
That was me. I said, well, because Shanahan was talking about him saying, yeah, I hope we get something done over the course of the week, blah, blah, blah. And then, one thing that Shanahan said that really stood out to me was when Verrett first worked out for the 49ers, which was before he signed with the Texans practice squad, 7 49ers players watched the workout. And Kyle Shanahan said he's never seen anything like that before. That's how much respect Jason Verrett commands in that locker room, that 7 veterans went out of their way to watch his workout. But anyway, I pressed the issue and I said, just to confirm, you do plan, if possible, to sign Jason Verrett. And Kyle gave me a straight answer. He said, yes, we want to sign Jason Verrett. So I think that the only holdup would be, is another team going to swoop in with an active roster invitation for Jason Verrett, which I don't think is very likely, but it's possible because the practice squad pays a lot less and the 49ers only have room on the practice squad right now. So I think if that is Jason Verrett's opportunity, that might be what he was building toward. I don't know what happened in Houston, but I do know that the 2 front offices and coaching staffs are very close, right? Because D'Amico Ryans used to be with the 49ers, and we know that Verrett worked out with the 49ers about 2 months ago when those 7 players watched. We then know that he signed with the Texans practice squad. We know that he looked good with the Texans practice squad because That's what the 49ers have been saying about their communication with Houston. We know that the Texans released him, and we know that he flew straight to Santa Clara for a workout. So this is just me speculating, but it is possible that Jason Verrett asked for his release in Houston because he wanted to join the 49ers because he knew that there might be an open spot there. And he's a respected veteran, knows that coaching staff. And they said, of course, you should go to a team that has a chance to win a Super Bowl this year if you want to give this one final run. I don't know if that happened. That's me speculating, but the timeline of events is mighty interesting, especially considering the fact the 49ers have such a good relationship with the Texans.
Is that do you read into that there may be either some disappointment in what they're seeing from Darrell Luter Jr. or Samuel Womack Jr., or do you think that just because he's a veteran, you can never have enough cover guys? They have until Wednesday or Thursday before Thanksgiving next week to make a decision on Luter, Robert Beal, Samuel Womack. Is that right?
Yeah, I think Womack for sure is going to get a spot. I think Luter and Beal were always more long shots and would only play if there were injuries. And the 49ers, you can knock on wood again, they haven't had those injuries. They're rookies, right? So they probably were going to have a little bit longer of a developmental curve, but they can use Womack. And the thing about Verrett is if you sign in the practice squad, it's just a practice squad spot.
Right.
It's like the ultimate flyer move, right? They took a flyer on him last year and he got hurt. He tore his Achilles in practice. It didn't hurt them beyond the injury, right? It wasn't like he was taking up another spot for the 49ers last year. So, and it wasn't like he was taking up a lot of money. He was playing the minimum at the veteran minimum. So I think it's going to be a similar thing this season. Practice squad, preset salary if they do sign him, and it's only upside, right? It's only upside because the respect that he garners in the locker room, like I said, the 7 players watching his workout, the example that somebody who's persevered through so much can set for your culture. I mean, we talked about them trying to build as impressive of a locker room as possible. Well, who wouldn't want a guy with such good technique who has overcome 2 Achilles tears and 2 ACL tears in the locker room? And they already have an all-star locker room as far as the personalities go. And if Jason Verrett can only help it, which if you talk to anybody in that locker room, they'll tell you he can only help it. A practice squad spot is not a very high price to pay for that.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's got special feet, special reactions, special mirroring ability. And yeah, it all comes together in a package that's often hurt. But if you can get him healthy, he could have the kind of coverage on a Devontae Smith in a playoff game that could vault you into the Super Bowl. Steve Wilks, so much was made of Steve Wilks' seat at the game, Dave. Where he was going to his vantage point. I thought the major difference in that game was the addition of Ambry Thomas, who played 46 snaps and essentially replaced Isaiah Oliver, who wound up playing 3 snaps. And yet Steve this week, when he had a chance to compliment Ambry, also threw in another compliment for Oliver and said, this isn't the end of the road for Oliver. What's your read on, are we going to see Ambry out there instead of Oliver again this week? What role do you see Oliver potentially filling?
Oliver covers the bigger tight ends when they split out into wide receiver positions. He did a good job in week 3 against Darren Waller, the tight end, the 6'3", 6'4" tight end for the New York Giants. I just don't think that he's got the change of direction to cover the smaller, the shiftier guys, right? Yeah. And I think that's where you get the advantage with Diamondo Lenore. Now, I'd also urge people to realize that Jimmy Ward, I mean, it took him some time to really get acclimated to that slot position. It was new for him last year. You can't expect Diamondo Lenore to just go in there and shut everybody down to the tune of 1 catch for 4 yards on the game. It's going to be a little bit of a process. That is the one softer, weaker spot of the 49ers defense, and they're shuffling because they're trying to figure it out. And I do think that the roles are just prescribed by the size of the opposing receiver and whatever his strengths are. And a guy like Darren Waller, that's an Isaiah Oliver matchup. Somebody like Christian Kirk, that's a Diamondo Lenore matchup.
The screen game. Yeah, I asked Wilks this week about the screen game, and he said, I wish I had it for you right here because I could play it for everybody. But he was like, "Hey man, you need to whoop that ass in front of you." I mean, he was basic, and he said it a couple times. Yeah, basically, it's like, "Hey, defending screens is not necessarily about coaching. It's about the physical desire. And, if you're up the field as a rusher, do you bust ass getting back downfield? If you're, are you beating the guy in front of you, and rallying to the football? It's about accountability and attitude more than scheme or coaching points. I think that was his point. But clearly the 49ers, and Shanahan addressed it today. Shanahan said, hey, we need to get better at defending these screens because the film that we've put out there shows that we're susceptible to screens. And until you show you can defend it, you're going to see it more and more.
Well, I think tackling is so important. And if you look, I think Wilkes is exactly right. If you look at the drive where Jacksonville had success on screen passes, there were consecutive missed tackles from Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw that let that drive get going. And I believe that's when the Jaguars kicked their field goal. So, and that was their only points of the game. So it is about execution in the open field. There is no magic bullet against screen passes from a play calling perspective, because offenses are always going to have a little bit of an advantage, you would think, because they're the ones that decide where to go and defense has to react to it. So if an offense gets into a decent position to run a screen pass, the guy who is in the zone of where that running back catches the ball or where that receiver catches the ball, he's generally going to have to make a play, because a well-schemed screen is going to go to a spot of the field that's pretty stretched out. And if that one player doesn't make the tackle, well, then there's going to be a lot of room to run until the rest of the horde could get to him. And that's exactly what happened against Jacksonville. Fred Warner had a shot. Dre Greenlaw had a shot. They both missed on consecutive screen passes. The good news for the 49ers is they missed only 7 total tackles against Jacksonville. They had missed 32 total tackles over the prior 3 weeks combined. There were games in weeks 3 to 5 where the 49ers only missed a combined 9 tackles over 3 weeks. So they got 3 times as worse tackling over the losing streak than they were prior to the losing streak. And I think they're trending back toward the airtight tackling games where they weren't missing them. And that would be really, really big for this team, because I think that's what's going to eliminate those screen passes.
Couple last ones before we let you go. Do you think Adam Peters is, I saw him connected to the Raider general manager job. I've always wanted to interview him, and I haven't had the opportunity to, so I don't have a good feel for his mindset, but he's a NorCal guy who wanted to be here. And I've always kind of assumed that he's the heir apparent to John Lynch as the 49ers general manager. But now Lynch has got an extension, and it sounds like he's here for a longer period of time. Do you think Peters ultimately will leave here and go run his own show somewhere else? Or do you think he'll show the patience? And I think eventually, if he stays here, he'll be the general manager of the team. What do you think?
The way that the things are going for the 49ers right now, I think that he's happy in the Bay Area, went to Monte Vista and Cupertino. John Lynch just got that promotion in title, right? So that opens up the door for Adam Peters to potentially get a promotion in title at some point. I think he's happy. I don't think that he, relishes being the forward-facing on-camera presence. I think he loves the personnel aspect. I think he loves the football aspect of it. So because of that, if you're the GM somewhere, you do have to be that forward-facing on-camera presence. And I don't think that Adam Peters would say no to that type of job, but I think it would have to be the absolutely perfect situation, because he's in a pretty damn ideal situation right now with the 49ers. So he could just bide his time. He's like a quarterback sitting back in the pocket with really good pass protection. There's no reason to make a hurried throw. He can wait for somebody to get open.
Hey, I got a chance to talk to Chase Young this week, and really impressed by him. One, what are the odds you think the 49ers will be able to sign him beyond this year, Dave? And in addition to that, I was looking at some of the blitz rates. Weeks 1 through 8, Niners blitzed 27, almost 28% of the snaps. Week 10 against Jacksonville, only 14%. Do you think that we're going to see them blitz a whole lot less now that they have Chase Young?
Oh, of course. I mean, the goal for any football team is the pressure with 4.
Yeah.
And you want to just throw in those blitzes when you think you could catch the opponent off guard, when you need a little extra disruption or whatever be it. So 49ers were getting pressure with 4. The pressure was married with the coverage on the back end. that was the goal. The 49ers realized that they would like to keep that going. I think it was really key for the back end to throw out a lot of the disguises that were confusing Trevor Lawrence. And the season is a never-ending chess match, right? You just have to continue to counter adjust to opponents' adjustments, and we'll see how Steve Wilks does moving forward there. And we'll see how Chase Young does within the context of all that, because that's going to determine whether the 49ers go hard after trying to re-sign him or not, or they could franchise tag him. We'll see. Still a lot of season left to be played, though. So for right now, you just evaluate Chase Young with the games that you have, and then you look up at the end of the year and you say, hey, is this guy an A-lister? Is this somebody who we can afford to pay? Is this somebody who fits into our structure? And the 49ers love to pay their A-listers. And if he is, I think they'll pay him. But if there's something about him that doesn't quite fit, and we still need a larger sample to know, then I think that the 49ers won't. It's just going to be a matter of deciding over the next few games.
Man, I love the way he sets the edge, and I just love he's got an array of moves. I mean, you're talking about a guy who's not a speed rusher solely. He's got a fantastic array of moves, kind of like a Nick Bosa. Robert Whitaker says, David, appreciate all of your analysis. It's often data-driven and insightful, but I rarely hear you being critical of the organization. Why? Robert,
well, first of all, what's there to be critical of right now? They're 6-3. They fixed their problems over the 3-game losing streak. If you didn't hear me being critical over the course of their losing streak, you just weren't paying attention, because I'm fairly critical whenever I was the first person to bring up the issue of the 49ers having a bad run defense this year. Nobody else was talking about that. We talked about it on this show with Larry. So that was the biggest issue. And if I'm the first person to criticize it, I don't understand how you could say that I haven't been critical. Whenever the 49ers have made a bad move, I've said it. I don't think I could do anything else. I'm also just a person that relies on perspective a lot. So I'm not going to sit here and dwell on a draft pick that didn't work out from 2017 or 2018 or Trey Lance in 2021. I'm not going to sit here and dwell on that draft pick without also acknowledging that the draft is a complete crapshoot and that the way to succeed in the draft is on the aggregate. So I'm going to look at the big picture. So I think there's a lot of criticism out there that is just for clicks these days. That's not the type of criticism that I partake in. I partake in fair criticism that is nuanced and takes into account the big picture. And the big picture is that the 49ers have gone from the worst roster in the NFL to the best roster in the NFL. And this is an objective truth. They're 6-3, and they're in the running to try to win a Super Bowl right now. And if my coverage doesn't reflect that, then I'm not covering the team correctly. The tenor of the coverage and the level of the criticism needs to reflect the truth and not what you want to see just for clicks on the internet. So that's my answer to that.
Yeah, I think the one thing I do enjoy about your coverage, Dave, is that you don't go into it with an agenda and then trying to kind of force feed the agenda. You cover it more like a media person as it comes, and you're looking for facts to support your opinions, where I think a lot of people are just looking for opinions to support the facts that they want to cherry pick. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I'm going to cherry pick this stat. And I'm going to come up with this, so anyway, and everybody's got a different style of doing it. Let's be honest. I mean, this is a blank canvas. And when you're writing like you do, or if you're speaking like I do, it's a blank canvas, and there's any number of different directions we can take these things. And I don't want to be negative for negative sake. I don't want to fire shots at people just so I can say I fire shots. I want to have conviction in everything that I bring to the public in regards to this football team, good, bad, or otherwise. And I feel like you're very much like me in that regard as well.
That's the mentality you have to have. People, there's negativity just to be negative. And it sets in some people's heads that observe this, it sets some kind of standard. And it's like, you need to be negative more. And it's like, no, I don't. I'm searching for the truth. I'm not searching for a certain level of negativity or positivity. I'm searching for the truth. And if a team has, under this regime, has taken the worst roster in the NFL, gone to 3 out of 4 NFC championship games, and currently has this loaded of a roster that is a betting favorite to win the Super Bowl, I think they deserve more positivity than criticism, right? Like, it's just 1 + 1 = 2 kind of stuff right now. No, it doesn't need to be an equal amount it doesn't need to be 50-50 when the truth says that it should be 95-5 or 90-10, right? And if the 49ers go on a big slide over the next 6 games and a ton goes wrong, well, my track record says that I'll be the first to criticize them. I'll be the first to fairly criticize them along with you. I'm not saying I'm ahead of you and criticize. I'm just trying to defend myself a little bit here. It's something that I get sometimes on Twitter, and it just doesn't make any sense because I look at my criticism of their offensive line over the years. I've thought that in 2019, that was an issue that held the team back. I've looked at, this year with the run defense. I look at the trends, and when the trends are pointing toward a problem for the 49ers, I pride myself in bringing it to the surface, right? So I just wish that people would pay attention a little bit more closely.
Well, and you work for an organization in The Athletic that doesn't pull any punches when you guys have an opportunity to ask tough questions. The tough questions get asked. Robert Whitaker says, fair points. Thanks, David. This one cracked me up. Red and Gold Niner Gang or Niner Bang says, David seems smarter than Larry. Thank you. And that is David went to Stanford. Larry went to Sac State.
On that. He needs to put a tip on that.
Oh, man. I went to Sac State. That's my excuse, and I'm sticking with it. I might not be as smart, but I don't have those student loans to pay back. Maybe that's not a good argument. Hey, Dave, good stuff, man. What do you got cooking on the channel the rest of the week? We'll see you Sunday, of course, down at Levi's for Niners Buccaneers. And, man, the Niners better deliver in this one because in a lot of ways this could be the trap game. You got Thanksgiving against Seattle. You got the Eagles looming. We all know those are kind of like sexy, big matchups, lots of attention, lots of dialogue. All last week will all be for naught if they cough this one up against Tampa Bay.
Yeah. I don't think they're going to cough it up against Tampa Bay. I got the 49ers winning by quite a bit. I'll have my prediction tomorrow and just same old. We'll see you out at the stadium and I'll have a good time. I think it's going to be sunny. I think we're going to get through this storm. That's nice. It's raining right now in the city. I'm sure it's not great weather where you're at over in the East Bay right now, but I think it'll be good weather, a nice fall football game. And that's my plan for the week. Nothing crazy. And then we got Thanksgiving, so it'll be good.
G. Martinez says San Jose State's greater than Sac State. Damn you, G. Martinez.
You're taking a beating right now in the comment section, man.
I've never liked San Jose State. No, I'm just joking. Anyway, hey, thanks to everybody. Thanks to our sponsors. Let me get a quick shout out. MarinAutoGlass.com. 415-883-3030. New York style Italian sausage. It's the only kind of sausage I will eat is New York style Italian sausage. And the title sponsor of the Krueg Show, Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Red and Gold Niner Bang says, great show, fellas. I also want to announce tonight that starting very shortly, in the month of December, we will be announcing a major sponsor addition to the Krueg Show, in addition to New York style sausage, Marin Auto Glass, Mojo Fantasy, Underdog Fantasy, and Pig and a Pickle. We will have a major announcement coming later on this month on a major new sponsor brought to you by To Be Determined. We will let you know about that, though. I'm very excited about that. That got finalized this afternoon. Dave, great stuff, man. We will see you in Santa Clara on Sunday. Have a great Saturday. You going to swim in the bay with the Sharks tomorrow? When's the next bay swim coming up?
We'll see what the weather's like. I like to have some psychological warmth from the sun. And if that sun isn't shining, it's tough. So,
man,
yeah,
I'm scared of sharks, man. I don't want to get eaten by a shark.
I'm more scared of the cold. So, no, we'll see. If the weather somehow shines through tomorrow, then yeah, might go check out Stanford and Cal tomorrow.
Oh, that's right. Big game.
Yeah, big game is tomorrow.
Where?
So it's at Stanford. So
that's Stanford.
I might pop my head in there and see that game, and then I'll go back and rest for the big 49ers game on Sunday.
Well, we'll see you Sunday. Thanks to all of you guys. Thanks for all the supers. Thanks to the sponsors. Peace.
Yeah, never met a man I've been scared of. Careful.